So if you give a big round of applause for Mr. Ellis San Jose. Yeah, man. Thanks. Here you go.
So, hey everybody. Uh, I'm really happy to be here. Nice to see a lot of familiar faces. Andy, Bruce. I don't do a whole lot of speaking, so bear with me. I don't know if Evan told you, but I was going as a student to a curative title class in Oklahoma about a month ago, and my good friend Tim, who I think is one of the most brilliant title people, real estate people, bar none, and that's why I went. And I was all excited to go, and I'm sitting down in the front row. And then Tim starts, he was like really fatigued and he was not feeling well. And about 10, 15, 20 minutes into the class, he starts looking at me with these panicked eyes. And he goes, Ellis, can you take over? And I'm like, what? But, I think it worked out. He did recover and we kind of taught the class together. But it felt like those old movies where like the guys in the crowd and they need a kicker for the game-winning field goal. I felt like that. Like, hey, this is really like it was quite a kick. So it was a lot of fun to do that. I think I should tell you guys a little bit about me. Um, I started out when I was in college. I worked for these amazing foreclosure investors, and I was just like this green pup that didn't know anything about anything. And they had me looking at properties, running to courthouse steps, doing foreclosure sales. And this is like a 19-year-old kid. And I was so happy. I got so happy doing this. I mean, we probably bought about 200 doors while I was with them, but I got so happy doing this that I neglected my schoolwork and I got on academic probation. And my dad was like, "What's it going to be, kid? Are you going to be a man? Are you going to finish school? And, because we're cutting you off unless, so I did finish school, but those years working in that foreclosure business was like a godsend because I got a taste of what it's like to buy stuff at really deep discounts. When everybody I knew, they went with an agent, they bought all, blah, blah, blah. So fast forward, I graduate and I think I'm like, I'm all that because I've done all this foreclosure stuff. And what happens in markets, things change, right? So, and I'm telling everybody how I'm going to make my millions. I actually bought my first property in 1989, believe it, because I knew everything. And it was negative cash flow, blah, 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 all this other stuff. So I was like, okay, I really got to learn. So I went back to the drawing board. And luckily, I met really, really good mentors. Names that you probably heard of: Jack Miller, Clyde Wilson, Gary Johnston, and probably one of the most influential is a guy his name's Rick Harmon. Rick Harmon, he's known as a probate guy. He keeps a pretty low profile, especially these days. But we talk on the phone. We were talking on the phone every Monday night for, I think, 15 years. And he brought me up to speed about how I could be a much smarter investor. So all of that, the reason I'm kind of telling you this is that stuff doesn't just happen overnight. You need a lot of really amazing people to kind of help and lift you up, because otherwise I would have been doing what everybody else is, and it's hard. And I have so much respect for people that are starting off this journey. So I just wanted to say that. Let's see. So dirty title. Let's get into it. Hidden real estate millions. This is how you can get in touch with me in my Instagram and my email. I'll have it again toward the end. So this is what I call profit boxes. Hopefully everybody can see that. This is kind of like the typical model of what I was doing when I was buying and flipping and all that stuff. So you can see the ARV is in the very top. There's the as-is value. Then you have property taxes, first mortgage, if there's any other liens and judgments. Then that little green box is what I call profit A, right? And the box below that is the owner's equity. So hopefully you can get a nice sliver, right? What was the old formula? Used to be 65% of ARV minus expenses. And then you're in California, that moves up to 70%, 75%, right? Depending on the market. I saw people buying stuff at like 80, 85% when it was like really competitive. But I knew that there's got to be more to it than that, right? It's really hard. So I wanted to learn, and luckily I learned some other things. So let's define what dirty title is. So the way I define it is assets or property that are insurable and have marketable title. it's one value, right? So if you go and buy a property and you can easily market it and sell it, you can get title insurance, you have one value there. Now there's a second value, which things that have dirty, uninsurable, unmarketable title. So if I had a house and I said, I'd like to sell you this house, can't get title insurance for it, I can't really promise that I'm the owner of it, you know, you know, like what are you going to do with that, right? But in between those two numbers, it can be really huge, and if you can fix it, that's where I think the gold is. And I don't like to do like a lot of PowerPoint slides, so I'm just going to try to tell stories in between. But I always have this penchant for like, how do I get an edge in this whole thing? There's got to be some secret, right? And there are, and dirty title was until recently a very tightly regarded secret. And I don't really talk a lot about it. And like Goodwin was asking me to come here for many years, and I was like, I don't know if I want to, but I'm happy to share at least a little bit. So another thing that messes up title are loans, liens, and judgments, right? Something, you ever see a loan that's been unreleased, but it's been there forever? It's like a really old loan. Or have you ever seen like a lender that's defunct, right? Now, what do you do with that? Like a lender, I don't even know who this lender is. What happens to it? Well, those things have to be released. Then there's judgments, right? Sometimes that kills the deal. There's like a Courtney situation, $500,000 house, $1 million in liens. You usually just toss those and you move on, right? Sometimes there's opportunity in there. So actually, my first foray into getting a taste of what dirty title was with liens, when I was buying notes. So when you're negotiating liens, you know about priority, right? You can there's a first mortgage, junior liens, and then judgments, and it usually falls in priority of who gets paid first, right? So when I first started out, I don't know if I told you I was a stockbroker for because when I was having these negative cash flow properties, I was like, okay, real estate is not for me. I'm going to go be a stockbroker to make tons of money. So I was a stockbroker, and then I met this guy, Bruce Norris. Maybe you've heard of him. So he had this presentation talking about how California property was going to double and triple, and I was like, wow, that anybody could claim that, right? But then I went to go see him speak, and I was like, this guy makes a lot of sense. So I started when I was a stockbroker, instead of buying like Porsches and Jaguars. Well, I did have a Porsche, but that's another story. But like instead of like really throwing my money away, I started buying real estate, and then I quit my job as a stockbroker. People thought I was crazy. It was 2001. But my wife was like, say, look, you've learned all this stuff in real estate. I actually studied it, Ward Hannigan. I paid Ward Hannigan, I think it was like $2,000 at that time to study. It was like a 3-day thing. And then I was complaining about how hard it was to be a financial planner, blah, blah, blah. My wife was like, well, why don't you just quit and be a full-time real estate investor? And so I did it, and people thought I was crazy. I said, I'm done. I'm not going to keep my Series 7 license anymore, CFP, all that stuff. And of course I started door knocking, right? And then it was a time when it was very easy to get a loan, no matter how bad, So I'd knock on the door and I go, hey, you're in foreclosure? Like, yeah, get out of here, kid. I don't want to talk to you. So I'm like starting to get these, you ever get these nightmares where you have to go back to your W-2? I mean, not to put anybody, that, because if some people here are probably in W-2, but when I was like, when I gave that up, I was like, I will never want to go in this cubicle again, right? It was so painful, and I would have these nightmares. And so I go to Ward, and I don't know if you know Ward very well. He doesn't really mince words, but I started belly aching. What? No one's going to do it anymore. And he's like, shut up, kid. What have you thought about buying the note? And I'm like, oh, what's that? So he taught me how to buy notes. So I started buying junior liens. And then I learned about this model, which is very cool. Did you know you could just buy the note of a property, and if it gets foreclosed on, you get paid in full? So what I was doing, I was buying these darn things, because Ward said, oh, try to buy them for 10, 20 cents on the dollar. I'm like, okay. Right? I didn't know. So I did it. And the very first note I bought, I did the little word calculator, and it was like 20 cents a dollar. It ended up being like $800, right? For a second trustee. And the guy said yes right away. And then that sinking feeling, like, why do you say yes right away? What did I do wrong, right? So I remember him. He was a retired firefighter. He had a condo in Gardena, and he carried back a second trust deed and bought it for $800. And then I was like, okay, now what do I do? So I call up the condo owner and say, hey, I'm the new lender, and you owe me blah blah blah. You haven't paid in a while. And she's like, yeah, go away. Oh, all right. So I go, oh, now what do I do? Well, then I go, hey, Ward, do I foreclose on her? He's like, yeah. So I call a foreclosure trustee. I send him all my information, and then they send a foreclosure notice to her. And then she calls me. What is this? I go, well, this is your balance, blah blah blah. She goes, well, I'm not. I'm declaring bankruptcy. Oh, and I was like, oh, is this bad? So she declares bankruptcy, but you know what? Bankruptcy is actually kind of a cool thing, because you know what happens is that the federal bankruptcy court becomes your debt collector for you. So do you know how much I was getting paid on her plan every month? $800 a month. The new plan, yeah. So they said, okay, if you want to, stay out of foreclosure, you got to pay Ellis $800 a month. I'm like, I like this, right? So I ended up collecting, I think, like $15,000 off that $800 investment. And I said, hey, Ward, I think you were worth it. So after that, I started buying all these other notes, and I bought same formula. I bought a $60,000 note for like $12,000, and I was going crazy. And I remember I was talking to, so we had clubs like this back then too. And all these guys are working hard and flipping properties and rehabbing. And I kind of felt guilty because I would sit at home and I would get a phone call from escrow saying, we need you to send in your demand because for this person selling the property or whatever. And then I would type it up. I would send it and they would wire me money. And I was like, well, I like this. So I got really spoiled back then. But this is the model, right? It's like, forget about just profit A. There's other profit. You can go buy debt and wait. And sometimes you get a payment. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get a nice big lump sum at the end of the rainbow. So then I got kind of a taste of, well, there's something more here than just what everybody else is doing. Because at that time, I know you had somebody here talk about notes maybe a couple weeks ago, but at that time, nobody really knew what was going on with that. And then there's also, this is the more advanced stuff where there's chain of title breaks. So you have an owner A from 1990 passes the ownership to owner B in 2005. And then owner C, there's like a break in the proper documents. There's a break of the proper deeds, etc. So then you have to determine, well, who really is the owner in this thing? So that's basically one of the many title defects. So if you fix this break in title, you can make a lot of money because people will just like stay away from that thing. I mean, you can't, put it on the MLS. Good luck, right? No one's going to touch that thing. But if you know what to look for, you can do pretty well. So here are some other red flags when you see title issues. There are deceased owners. That's probably the most frequent one I run into. So, unfortunately, human behavior, people don't think they're going to die. They think they're going to live forever. And so their plan for, inheriting the property isn't always clear. They just keep it in their name. And then, I've found properties where great-grandfather has died and everybody just paid the taxes on it. And then nobody ever bothered to open a probate. So now you have, and I'll talk about some case studies about some of those things. Life estates that have been unreleased. That's another deed red flag. Non-existent and defunct entities. I could tell you some crazy stuff I've heard of this stuff that I've been involved with. Missing or improper signatures. That can screw up title too. And then a big one is anything that's uninsured transfers. You've probably seen a lot of quitclaim deeds back and forth. Those are very suspect because those are not insurable. So a lot of times there's some imperfections with transfer of ownership with quitclaim deeds. So everybody has seen a title commitment? Yes? Yeah? So when you get a title commitment, there's two parts of it. There's Schedule A, Schedule B. Most everybody focuses on Schedule A. Lists all the facts, right? This is what the title company will insure, right? This list A says, okay, this is what we're going to do, but you know where the real gold is? It's in Schedule B. That's what the title company says. Look, I don't know about this. We have a real interest. So if anything ever comes up about anything in the Schedule B, It's not insured. We're not covering it, right? So that to me is the opportunity list, right? Schedule Bs. And yeah, read your title commitments in title reports and look for these things instead of kind of what a normal person would look at. Be abnormal like me. Look at the weird stuff. So a little bit about title basics, title searching basics. There's a little memory aid called FITES, F-I-T-E-S. I learned this from Ward Hannigan. And what F stands for is full transfer. So there's like I think I have a copy of a deed that shows there's a box that says if there's a full transfer or if it's a partial transfer. So if it says anything but a full transfer, you need to go further back in the title chain to see where you have the full transfer, because like if you take something subject to, that's not a full transfer because you're actually the debt still remains on the property, right? So that is a partial transfer. The first I is institutional lender. So if you see a bank like Chase or just any institutional lender, chances are, it's not 100%, but chances are they've really scrutinized this before they put the loan on the property. So there's a very high chance that that has a clear title. Then also there's actual title insurance. If you look at a deed, it'll show the title insurer's name and it'll also have a number, right? So that shows that it has a title insurance policy. Then also escrow number, something that went through a formal escrow with a recognizable name. That's always a good sign. If it hasn't gone through escrow, hasn't gone through title insurance, you need to look further. And the last one is S. It's sequential. So does anybody ever look at title reports where you'll see a grant deed and then you'll see a trust deed right after? So what happens is that you get the property, it's transferred to you, but then the bank says, well, we're going to put our lien against it. And those numbers, when you see the registered number, they should be one after the other, sequential. If they aren't sequential, you should be questioning what's going on here. So this is hard to see, but in the upper box, it'll say full value is computed on full value of property conveyed. And then the other one says full value less liens and encumbrances. So that was a property I took subject to. So that way it's not going to have the first box X'd. It'll be the second box. Yeah. Oh, right. Thank you. There, yeah. So there you go. So there, right, it has full value. This one shows value less any existing encumbrances. So probably the most valuable skill I learned was learning how to read title. When I was buying notes, when I buy properties, I can see opportunity because of some flaw or something something isn't right. I wanted to show this one because this is a fraudulent deed. So I run into a lot of these too. So probably hard to see, but this is a trust transfer deed, right? And if you see, and I don't mind putting her name up there because she's a crook. She's been prosecuted. This is a crazy story. So a friend of mine calls me up. He says, "Hey Ellis, there's this really cool house in Bel Air, and I think we could buy it from the lender." And I'm like, okay, I'll look at it. And I look at it and I see this person involved and I see like this mountains of litigation involved. And it was probably like a $5 or $8 million property in Bel Air. And they're just like squatting in this property. And they were there for years, right? And then she's filing all this crazy stuff.